Good evening and welcome to Doc and Sock. We're broadcasting live right here from Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South, in the capital of the great state of Mississippi, Jackson, a city that is 85% African American, the city with the most African Americans of any city in the country is right here in Jackson, Mississippi. 85+% black folk. We control the school board, the airport authority, the mayor's office, and the Hinds County Board of Schools, Board of Supervisors, and Jackson Public School System. We are in charge in Jackson, Mississippi. All of you African Americans that are envious of us down here in Jackson running things, we want to give you the opportunity to come and join us. We'd love to have you become a permanent resident of Jackson, Mississippi, especially those of you with skills and capacity and vision and the ability to get things done. Now, the rest of you can come along later, but right now we need to put some engines on the train so that we'll have enough horsepower to move this thing forward. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, then share this program with your friends and family. If you're watching us on YouTube, go on and subscribe to the program. We need your support there. We're almost have completed all of the requirements for the YouTube partnership program. We need a few more viewing hours, and I know we'll get that very, very soon. If you're watching us on our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, you know, as I always say, we're a little bit different. We're not a page. We are, in fact, a network. And so in this building, here in Jackson, Mississippi, we are the black press. We control black media. And Jackson has some of the best media outlets in the entire country. Let's think about it for a moment. The Jackson Advocate is here in Jackson, Mississippi, one of the oldest newspapers in the entire country, founded by Percy Green, and then ran by Charles Tisdale, and now being run by Alice and her daughter, Deandra Tisdale. A wonderful establishment. Been doing a great job in the black community for years and years and years. And then you have the Mississippi Link newspaper here in Jackson, Mississippi, a publication that's renowned and known all over this country. Jackie Hampton, the publisher of the Mississippi Link newspaper, is in California, Los Angeles, California, as we speak, at a conference dealing with issues surrounding the black press and the lack of advertising support that we get from major companies. You know, I'm told that one of the items that they discussed out there this weekend was the fact that companies like Walmart and Pepsi-Cola and those companies are not spending their advertising dollars with black folk in black media. We take Jackson, for example, $600 million invested in the rebuilding of Jackson's infrastructure, and I see all kinds of announcements and publications in white-owned media, but I see no advertising at all and no notices to black folk about what they should be aware of when it comes to high water bills, when it comes to unsafe conditions in our community. We got issues going on now with natural gas utility companies. We got issues going on with our water. And black press doesn't even seem to be recognized by white-controlled purses. And people that are in charge of those funds ought to know by now that that's just totally not appropriate. I mean, J.C. Penney's learned long ago that if you wanted to sell clothes to black folk, then you ought to put some black mannequins in the clothing store. It just makes good sense. You know, we look at all of the African Americans that are there on the stage at the Super Bowl, but I see no African American owned commercials, no companies that are able to buy airtime during the Super Bowl. It ought to tell you there's something wrong. is something wrong. And we're going to talk about those things here on this show tonight. Now, if you scroll down on that website, you'll see WBLV Radio. We want you to tune in and listen to some of the best gospel and blues that you ever want to hear, and then you'll hear the talk shows. I was listening to Organize, Don't Criticize at 4 o'clock this afternoon with Dr. Henderson on WBLV Radio. So you see what I'm saying to you is that you got the Jackson Advocate here, you got the Mississippi Link here, you got WMPR radio station here, you got We Believe Network here, all 4 black-owned and operated media companies, and we don't get any advertising dollars at all. When we take a look at the dollars that the state spends over on Super Talk and WYAB, we understand that they carry that message of the Republican Party, and so they're rewarded in doing so by the state spending millions of dollars on those networks, but the state doesn't spend any money with black-owned media, and yet we say that racism is dead, that this is the post-racist environment. No, it's not. We see it evident every day. We see it in a flawed judicial system. We see it in the flawed legislations that's coming out of our legislators every day, trying to take over black-owned assets. We see it in the lack of support for municipalities that are predominantly black. We see no advertising dollars being spent in black media. Black contractors get less than 1% of contracts for goods and services out of the state government, and you want me to think that we're doing okay. You want me to believe that when somebody is actually pissing on your leg, you want me to think that it's raining. Well, it's time out for that, and during Black History Month, we're going to focus on the things that we know that must be corrected, and then we're going to deal with why it is that there's so much hatred and despair that runs through our brothers and sisters. We're going to talk about that tonight during Black History Month. Now, as always, you know, my co-host, Dr. Eldridge Henderson, is in the studio, a man that I tell you was born on a Mississippi plantation, a man that, much like Moses, had to be put in a basket and set afloat in the river just to save his life, because the edict had been that black, and still is today, that black males are a threat and they must be dealt with. Dr. Henderson managed to get off of that plantation. And he's here in the studio now, and he's one of the most renowned orators in this country. And if you need someone to come and speak to your schools and your churches and your municipalities, then he is the man for you. Not only is he book smart, but he's street smart. He can tell you from living experience as well as from being educated. Doc, how have you been? It's good to have you in the studio.
Oh, thank you. I've been well, and I still see, sir, that you are hoping that some of your former Mississippians and Southerners will return to the state. I see you asking for people that have money, that possibly retired, that could make a contribution, and you say the others can come later.
Yes.
That is real nice. Now, why they can't come, those that don't have anything, that don't want to work, that have no training, no credentials, why you don't want them to come here and see if they can get on welfare or something? We have a lot of welfare programs that will keep them alive, but that's about it. You rather they stay in California, New York City, Chicago, and places like that?
We have to rebuild, Doc, and you can't have a large population of unskilled people in your rebuilding mode that you're in. Now, once you get your foundation set, maybe you can put more people on the boat. But now, even Noah didn't put but 2 of a kind.
Well, that's right. Well, now, I don't disagree with what you said. I just wanted you to explain it to the people. I didn't want our listeners to think that you are middle-class conscious and don't want the poor people to come back to Mississippi. You're 100% right. They should come later once the people with resources get here, buy more land, buy more houses, bring their businesses, start businesses, get their children here that have those modern skills to come back also and make Mississippi great again.
Make Mississippi great again.
That's right.
Now you got to be careful with that slogan, but I understand, and I want our viewers out there to understand why it is that Indians can move in our community and then end up owning all of the hotels. I'm not talking about your 5-star hotels. I don't believe we even have a 5-star hotel in Jackson, Mississippi. I mean, the Westin Hotel is here, but I don't think it's a 5-star. But the Indians own most of the hotels in Jackson, and they own most of the convenience stores in Jackson, Mississippi. Well, their population may be less than 2 to 3%. They own 90% of those industries. How can that be?
That's very, very easy. It's because black people and white people allow it to happen. From my research and information and knowledge of Caucasians, they don't want them in their neighborhood. They don't want the convenience stores. They don't want the cashier's places until they get to be 5-star. And the Indians and others know it. They know the black people will accept anything because in most cases they don't own the land that they live on. They don't own the houses. And they go in and rent what's available. And black folks, since they have been excluded from the community business arena, usually because of lack of spending their resources in organizing businesses, afraid to start with nothing and build it into something, they just fall in that void because they say, if you want to make it in America and you're not classified as white, you get as close as you can to the black community and you become rich in less than 1 generation. And then, once you learned enough English and send your sons and daughters to the universities, after you give them private tutoring at home, they'll go and excel and be doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, accountants, and so forth. And then you move into the middle class area, and you do like some of the athletes. A lot of these Asians make an effort to get hooked up with a what I call a European American. They marry and move into the elite area, get into the gated community, and they thrive, build more businesses, and then they're in that 5-star area.
Wow. So let me be clear about this so that our viewers out there all over the world will understand this. The Indians that come into the black community are the elite of the country where they came from. They didn't come in here broke. They came in here as a part of that talented group that was sent here to expand a way of life and an economy for themselves, and then they brought others in. The first 15 Indians that I met in Jackson, Mississippi were all named Patel. They all had the same last name. There's some advantages to that. And so the elite move into our communities, not the ones that were on welfare and the ones that were bottoming out in India. They didn't come. Just the opposite with what's happening at the border crisis that was going on down in Texas and Arizona. There we're getting some of the cartels, some of the gangsters, some of the individuals that are less than desirable, and they are being placed into African American communities. And we'll see a spike in crime. We'll see a spike, a turn down in the community, just as we saw in Jackson, Mississippi after Katrina, when we had this great influx of people that came in out of New Orleans and out of the Ninth Ward. And we're not hating on anybody here, because all of us understand poverty. All of us understand the plight of Black America. All of us understand that you have dealt with some issues that require you to live in substandard conditions. Just like we live in the 2nd Congressional District in Mississippi for a long time. It's one of the poorest regions in the world, and that's where the majority of blacks in this state reside, in the 2nd Congressional District. And so we're not hating on anybody. We're just talking about the fact now that when you have this type of influx into our community, they are of two different classes. One is going to create and build, one is going to tear down and destroy. Doc, I believe we have a phone call coming in.
Okay.
Caller, can you hear me?
Yeah. Good evening to you and to Doc.
Say it again, caller.
I said good evening to you and to Doc.
Hello there. How are you today?
This is Doris. This is Doris.
Well, Doris, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what's going on and what part of the country are you in tonight?
Well, I'm in Biloxi, Mississippi tonight, but the problems in Chicago are still the same. The governor is now talking about coming up with an additional $250 million to help the illegal economic immigrants, while black people are still catching hell, being put out of their homes, put out of their communities, for the sole purpose of accommodating these illegal economic immigrants. So the situation in Chicago is dire. It's not getting any better. Crime is on the rise.
We're going
Pardon
to
me?
talk about that, and we're going to spend some time on that. I wanted you to call in tonight, in particularly because we have been dealing with Black History Month, and there are some issues that have just got me really puzzled, and I need someone to help me dissect and understand history in itself. Normally, when we talk about Black history, we're talking about traditional contemporary folk that did this or that. But tonight, I want to move back, and you tell me that mankind was created from Adam and Eve. Now, there are a lot of people who don't believe that story. They believe that the earth is alive and earth created its own population and things of that nature. The implication, though, is that if all mankind came out of Adam and Eve, we are thus saying that all mankind DNA lead them back to black people. Now, is that true or untrue?
That's true. See, well, when we talk about Black history, what I don't like about it is that we talk about slavery here in the United States and all of the other things that we've gone through here in the United States. But Black history did not begin with slavery. Black history began with the beginning of civilization. There's documentation. Now, I'm not a scholar, but I do read a lot. And as I said to you the other night, there are some scholars that you can get to come on your show and go into, that can go into this much deeper than I can. But Leakey, Dr. Richard Leakey, an anthropologist, he discovered, and it's documented, that mankind began in Africa. Black civilization is the beginning of civilization, and all other races and ethnic groups come from black people. That's a documented fact.
Hold it right there.
And
Hold it right there. Hold it right there. Doc, is she saying that Europeans came from black people? That they are descendants of black people? Wait, what am I hearing?
Well, you're hearing just what you said, and she is telling you what the history and the pre-ancient people stories share. And all the anthropologists have found information that will coincide with what she is saying. Even white people know that. They know they are descendants of Africa and colored types. They know that. But of course, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to teach it to their children. Never have and never will if they have anything to do with it. And that's what happens when you have the ability to write history. So black folks need to do just like we're doing, get our own media sources and create the history that will make our children feel better and want to do better and get in a position where they want to take over and dominate politics, economics, religion, and leadership initiatives throughout the world. I didn't say in Mississippi or the nation, throughout the world. That's our role, is to teach the real history as we see it.
Now,
Create the history you want. That's the way
well,
you do it.
I don't want to create the history that I want. I think that's happened too much already. Now, Doris, the Europeans, in my readings, came from the Caucasus Mountains, in that part of Europe and Asia, where Europe and Asia, Russia in that area share in two different continents. And so my understanding,
Like they migrated.
place of origin, that's a long ways from Adam and Eve down on the banks of the Nile. So how
They migrated.
how would you account for
They mi-
differences in
they migrated. They migrated.
Asians? They don't look.
They migrated out of Africa to all parts of the world. There's a brother, he's deceased now, but his name was Runoko Rashidi. Runoko Rashidi was a historian. He would travel all over the world. There is no place on the planet Earth that you will not find black people today. But what the Europeans have done, the Europeans have stopped that information being put out by design, because if black children knew that we are the mothers and fathers of civilization, if they knew what we have contributed to the world, black people gave the world civilization. And if our children knew this history, we would not be in the condition that we're in today. Why do you think they have done this for the last 500 years, especially in this country? What do you think what DeSantis is doing in Florida and what's going on in Texas? They are trying to rewrite history. That's what you call revisionist history. They do not want anything in these books, definitely things pertaining to ancient African civilization, and as I shared with you, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Those religions are based on the 42 principles of Ma'at, which comes out of ancient African civilization, 2900 BC. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit adultery. These are the 42 principles of Ma'at. Now, the white historians, the white geneticists, the white anthropologists, the white Egyptologists, they know this. These scholars, they know this.
Hold up right there, Doris. Hold up, Doris. Those commandments came from Moses.
No,
Now,
man, no,
he-
no, heck no.
No.
Right.
No,
no.
That's paraphrase, what I call privatized information that was taken from those old ancient documents and histories, and she is 100% right. I've done the research myself. I taught this to people for years, and you will find that all white people, if they will do the research, and they have too, will look at the pictures of the Asians, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Indians, the people from Australia and China and Latin America. If you look at the pictures of the people from 1,000 to 600, just 600 years ago, they are more colored than they are today. And if you look at it at 1,500 years, you'll see most of the Chinese, the Asians, the Indians, and those folks over in Australia, they are blacker than you are.
Now let's get back to
the
Moses
early
for a
folk.
minute, because you can't, Doris can't tell me that thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal came from the book of whatever she called it. I can't pronounce that. But
Well, that's because of the way religion has been taught. A few years ago, I was in Luxor, Egypt. Those people in that part of the world, they are dark skinned, some of them are jet black, and they have straight hair. They have straight hair like any white person, but they are black. They're in Luxor, Egypt today as I speak. old Mesopotamia, Iraq, old Mesopotamia. That's in the Bible. If the ministers would talk about blacks in the Bible, since they want to use the Bible, tell the truth. Iraq is nothing but old Mesopotamia.
I don't recall being taught anything about blacks in the Bible.
No, you haven't been. What did you think? Moses was not a white man, since we're going to talk about the Bible. His mother was Ethiopian and he had a white father. What do you think they meant when they said take him into Palestine? They wouldn't have sent a black baby into Palestine.
We got a lot to learn.
When they told Mary, it's just the way religion has been taught incorrectly. The facts are there, Mr. Socrates. The information is here. They know it. These white scholars know this.
Well,
but because of this white supremacy.
Let's move on to where the information is supposed to be housed. Now, there are museums all across this country. And I believe that we have
a
museum in Jackson, Mississippi. And so have you
a civil rights museum
throughout this country?
I've been to the museum in Detroit, I've been to the museum in the Carolinas, I've been to the museum in New York, I've been to the museum in D.C. They do not put anything in these museums pertaining to ancient African civilization, ancient history. They put things pertaining to the civil rights movement. That's all they do.
Why aren't the museums showcasing African American history from the perspective of where it really began?
It is too embarrassing for them to do that. They can't have the story that they are superior and they are the number one God-chosen people in the world. I just told you, they would get those old pictures of those civilizations at least 1,000 years, just 1,000 years ago. They will see that there were black people all over the world. And as the Asians and the others got infiltrated with the Muslims, they were of a different color. They weren't as jet black as the Africans. And the people came from the area you mentioned, the Caucasus Mountains, and all those people got together. They got locked in on continents in certain areas, and they were there by themselves basically for several hundred years, sometimes 600 and 800 years, without being intermingled with outsiders at the time. They excluded themselves and said, we are not going to have intermarriage. They made that against the law. And if someone intermarried, they was usually killed or banned. And if the child was born, if they didn't kill the child, they would put him somewhere in an adoptive situation. So they wanted to keep their groups pure as possible. And pure means look like me, them, who is one to say, I am the dominant person in this area. Then once you prove and demand your domination, you then teach others that you are the supreme person, even though you just got here 200 years ago or less. You whip it into them physically and mentally. And then you get the literature of the time and change that to fit your purpose and change anything you want in it and make yourself the discoverer of whatever you want it to be. And you pound it in the people. Then you exclude the original documents and keep them hidden away in the basement of the museum and do like to do at Jackson, just don't even mention it and start with the civil rights. Hell, black folks don't know much about civil rights in Jackson. They need to know what happened 5,000 years before and then pull that into the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson. Wow. That is a false house or institution in Jackson. It's very, very incomplete. Very much so. I don't want to go to no museum and see where I'm beaten and killed and stomped on and poisoned, whipped with fire hoses and dogs and horses and bombed and always been in a paratroopy type deal where I'm always receiving blows on the other end. That makes me feel that I'm not a real human being because I was told that, treated that way, and acted upon that way. And when you are beat down like that, that gives you an opportunity to say, I am not who I'm supposed to be. And that's why blacks throughout the world say that I am an outcast in the minds of the rulers at the time, even in my country that they took over, that I allowed them to take over. And I don't blame the outsiders all the time. I blame the people that were there and allowed them to come in. Now, they were so gentle and nice and Christian acting, even though they were not practicing Christians at the time. They were all, Christianity is a new religion compared to some of the others, but they were just nice people that believed in helping others. That kind of stuff will get you killed. That'll get your country taken away from you. That'll get you in a position where you're going to be miseducated. You have to say, I am here first. I am going to dominate. We're going to fight and die together. And I'm not going to be taken over.
We're going to go to a commercial break. That's a lot to digest, but when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee. To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
We're back. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi, the capital of this great state. 85% of its population looks like me. And yet, we get less than 10% of contracts for goods and services out of cities and municipalities where blacks are in control. And then we complain about racism, and we complain about bigotry, and we complain about all of those things other than, as Michael Jackson said, we will not look at the man in the mirror that is now in control in Jackson, Mississippi, and our situations don't seem to be changing. We're going to have to deal with the whole issue, Doc. We spent a lot of time on history, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to get into black history, and I want to talk about the origin of black folk and the contributions that they made so they won't think that we are beat down people like you described. I want us to spend some time talking about that, the heroic days and the things that we accomplished. It's tremendously important. But as we move on, I want to talk about some contemporary issues to you and Doris. Now, I'm beginning to see that there's a tremendous backlash for my brother, Tim Scott, out in Carolina, when he was standing there with President Donald Trump, and black folk are saying that he is a coon, that he is an Uncle Tom, that he's a buck dancing coon. And I don't know why we would say anything like that if we believe in democracy. A man should be able to support whomever he wants to support without being castigated and ostracized in the black community. We need to talk about that. Is Mr. Scott being treated fairly, Dr. Henderson?
Well, Mr. Scott is being treated according to the way he presents himself. He has been showing all those characteristics that you mentioned. He doesn't bring forth a manly type personality that's serious and focused. He has the tendency to skin and grin and pander behind Donald Trump because he is selected as the black man of the time. They first wanted to get Herschel Walker, and that was one of the best selections they ever made. So when you get somebody like Walker, he didn't even know how to spell certain words. So if he had been senator, that would have been a great thing for the Republicans because they had a guaranteed vote on anything they wanted. Though to get Mr. Scott in, Trump knows if he can get him in and promise him a good position, thousands and thousands of white people going to be proud to have him because they know he's not a threat. And Trump probably has promised him something, but I bet it's probably not going to be the vice presidency. He's probably going to give him an ambassadorship or make him a high-paid consultant on black affairs or put him somewhere in one of the smallest countries in Africa or in the Bahamas as an ambassador, give him 2 aides, $2 million, and tell him to solve those problems over there with the population of one of them little countries of 500 people.
Wow. Wow. Now, Doris, is it the fact
Yeah.
that Mr. Scott had a big, broad smile and was showing his teeth that caused black people problems? Or is it just that we don't think any black man should support Donald Trump?
I think that we should ostracize any black man or woman who does not push an agenda for their people. I don't care what party they are affiliated with. If they don't have an agenda for the black community, for black people, I think we need to ostracize them. I think we need to take them out of office. We can no longer vote for a person because he or she is black. They have to have an agenda. They have to support policies that are going to advance us as a race of people. So he is a coon and everything else, everybody is calling him because he does not have a plan or a vision for his people. He's doing the bidding of what others want him to do, not for black people. And that same thing applies to the politicians in Jackson, the black politicians in Jackson, the black politicians in Chicago, the black politicians in Congress. They are not pushing policies that will help us. I look at policy. I'm not concerned about the personality. I look at the policies. And so Mr. Scott, he's not on that agenda. And 99% of black politicians are not on an agenda that's going to push policies that will help us. And that's what legislation is all about, policy.
Well,
And these policies that are in place with the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party are detrimental to us.
well, to that end, Doris and Doc, black folk ought to have the option to be a member of the Republican Party if they choose to be without being slandered by other black folk.
Well, they do, and they are. There are a lot of black Republicans. You know a lot of them, and I know a lot of them, but they don't talk about it, and they shouldn't talk about it until they get to the number where they can talk about it and get some positions of responsibility, where they say to the in-house elite in the Republican Party in various areas, even if it's on a regional area or state area or county area, we have enough black folks in this county or this area to demand that you make certain appointments, or we're going to vote where the opposition will win. That's the way you do that. You don't go announce that I am a Republican or a Democrat until you get in a position where you can change something. You have to ease into the battle in the big horse and then come out fighting once you get inside the gate. That's the way you do that, Mr. Socrates.
All right. I hear your strategy there. I hear you. I hear where you're going there. Now, we need African Americans to be in leadership roles that have a certain set of criteria. So what is it that we're looking for in an African American position leader that we want to put in a position? What are the characteristics that we're looking for in a man or a woman that we want to be mayors, supervisors, vice presidents, senators, representatives, what are the key characteristics that we are looking for as black people in those people? Doris?
Well, in terms of policies, I'm looking for someone who is going to espouse policies that will be beneficial to us as a people. That's what I'm looking for.
Policy. Now, help me understand.
Policy.
Help me understand where policy comes from.
Okay, just say, let's just deal with contracts. Contracts there in this. I'll just use the black brother who had the contract to pick up the garbage. Why would black politicians be opposed to this brother getting that contract? Especially based on what I've read, he did a very good job. His proposal was much cheaper, and he provided much more than Waste Management was doing. So why would you oppose a brother getting that contract? It is because getting contracts, that's how you begin to grow economically. That's how he can, with his business, can help push his business or broaden his business. So why would you be opposed to a black man getting a contract of that nature when this is how white people have gotten where they are economically? This is how they have been able to surpass us economically, because they've always gotten a contract. So why would black politicians be opposed to that?
I get you.
That's a policy issue.
I get you. That's a great policy. Let's take another example. She mentioned contracts, but charter schools is one that's concept and a policy that's flourishing in Mississippi. The legislator had just passed legislation to spend public money in charter schools. Is that a policy that is detrimental to black folks, Doc?
Yeah, it is, but it. Go ahead, Doris. I'll.
Yes, it is. If we don't run the charter schools, if we don't have the curriculum, and if we just talked about curriculum pertaining to ancient African civilization, if we're not running the charter schools, those charter schools are not benefiting us. And the charter school was set up specifically to give hedge fund managers a tax break. That's how charter schools came about.
Well, it might have
And charter schools are
about that way, but black legislators are voting in support of charter schools, Doc.
Well, many of them have to.
Because you know what? Because black legislators don't fully understand the concept of charter schools.
I don't, hold up a minute, Doris. I don't believe is that they don't understand. Why are they supporting, why are black legislators supporting charter schools in Mississippi?
Well, not only charter schools, but other things. I've been told by some of the legislators, and I wouldn't call a name if you gave me $1 million, that Doc, one thing, say sometimes we just have to go along with certain things because we talk to these people in private, and they say if we support your deal, we are going to put our support on some of the things you want. But this person that told me, in a group of others, said they do that because they promise them something that they always want, and that is, we're going to give you a committee of significance or make you an assistant chairman on a committee. And once I get that, I will make some policies. And I told those politicians in a private group, that is just a way to get you in a position to support them. And whenever you get in that little position as the assistant, you're not going to have any power. And then if they make you the chairman of a committee, it's going to be the lowest one with the low visibility and no money. You're not going to be important there. And if you happen to squeeze something by, if it's anything of importance and it's not in their interest, they're going to send that to the speaker, the lieutenant governor, and the governor, and they're going to tell the boys that that's not going to even be presented on the floor. And he said, well, I know you're right, but you know, I want to get some power before I leave. I say, you're going to have some power when you die, if you're lucky enough to get in heaven. Otherwise, you're going to live in hell on earth and you're going to die and go to hell. Now, that's what I told those politicians.
Oh, yeah. Now, Doris, let's deal with policy. You think that the key thing for us as we get ready to select leaders, we're in the election cycle, is that we have someone that shares our vision of policy is the number one characteristic that we need. Now we have policy
That's one of them.
that our viewers will understand what we're talking about when we say policy. There is this thing called no-fault insurance. That's policy. It was created. There's this thing called tort reform. That's policy. It was created. There's this thing called Section 8 housing and the guidelines for when a black male can be in there and can't be there. That's policy. We're talking about redlining, where loans cannot be made in certain zip codes. Those things are policy. And those things are the kinds of things that we must have leaders that have the ability to stand up and fight for and correct. So let's just take it for example. Let's take Section 8 housing policy. Where did it come from, Doris?
Well, you know, there's good policies and there's bad policies. You have good policies and you have bad policies. Now, I am not for a policy when you come to talking about Section 8 or getting aid. In order for a black woman to get aid, the black man cannot be in the house. That's not good policy. Anybody with any common sense should know that. I'm not talking about supporting policies of that nature. I'm talking about supporting policies that are going to advance us as a people, black men, women, and children, not to separate us or destroy the family.
No,
That's a bad policy.
I'm not talking about us supporting it. We're just talking about what policy looks like out there to our viewers. I know you don't support.
Okay, but okay, that's a policy, and any black person who has any understanding of history or who is concerned about his people should not support a policy like that.
So policy is always important. We got to have leaders. Now, Doc, what are some of the other things that we look for in a leader? Should they have the ability to garner the support of the black community or their legislative bodies? Should they be able to build a coalition in diverse groups? And should black leaders be allowed to support a racist white governor on some issues, or do they just have to stand down at all times?
No, they must support these racist white governors and racist white senators. That's who the governor is and the senator. You know, most of them throughout America are racist to some extent. So you got to support some of those people, and that's why you have to try to get in there and get positions where you can do just as Doris saying and what you're saying, and have some policies and laws passed that's going to help improve your economic condition, your education status, and the leadership potential that your black people will have. For instance, if you have a school system and all the money is put into parochial schools, charter schools, or others, I guarantee you, your people are not going to get any. If you find a black person that will get a substantial piece of money for a charter school, I guarantee you 75% of the members of the board are going to be white, and they are going to select a what I call weak principal to be the principal of that charter school. Their kids going to be there en masse, and your kids going to have to be tested to get in there, and you're going to have to be able to pay hundreds of dollars to keep your child in that position unless he is a football or basketball player. Then they give him a little part scholarship to do that. So that's what I'm talking about. If you're in a position and you make policy and it's just going to help one group, that's not good. If we want black politicians that have enough foresight to pass comprehensive policies that's going to help everybody move from where they are to where they want to be. And if their favorites have already been put in office, where they made policies to be favorable to their group, then that black politician has to say, we're going to look for equity in this legislation. Since you are giving businessmen contracts that live and work in certain parts of the city or county, you're going to have to extend those same contracts to the lower part of the county or the city or the state and give people the same money to buy homes, and stop redlining and stop having these banks and others give contracts to certain newspapers and radio and TV stations, not the other. So if I'm going to be the Commissioner of Education, this is going to have to be statewide, where we have equality in spending. No more 5% and others get 95% off the contract.
So, Doris, in Mississippi, and the rest of the world take note, in Mississippi, we as black folk control certain segments of government. We control municipalities in this state. Even Rolling Fork, Mississippi, which was devastated by that tornado that came through here, has a black mayor. There are over 60 black mayors in the state of Mississippi. 60 black mayors in the state of Mississippi. We have a black congressman, Benny Thompson, that chaired the Homeland Security and chaired the committee on the January 6th event.
Insurrection, yeah.
Yeah. And so we have black folk in position in Mississippi. We have a commissioner of the transportation commissioners, only 3 in the entire state. 1 now is black, and Willie Simmons. We have a member of the Public Service Commission. Only 3 of those gentlemen control the whole states, and they regulate all of the rates on all of the utilities. One of those gentlemen is black, and Nikita Stamps. So in Mississippi, we have people in places, but why is it that we are not making any inroads to changing the quality of life for black people in Mississippi? Doris.
Well, it's like I've said before. They don't have a vision, or they don't have a plan. They're symbols without substance. We just have faces. They're black faces, but they're not making any demands. They're not coming up with any kind of plan to advance black people and to make sure politically that black people can get into the key positions as white. We have all the same in Chicago. We have all these people in key positions, and black people are at the bottom, and we're losing every day. That is because you have black politicians who are pushing an agenda for everybody else but their own people. It should not be.
Wow.
In Mississippi, 37% of the population is black? You have the political power there. You don't have the right people in place. And that is something that we're going to have to start looking at seriously and discussing and come up with a plan all across this country. Because we have these black people in these positions, but look at our condition. There's no way in hell we should be in the condition that we're in.
Well,
might as well have white folks in there based on what the black politicians are doing.
Well, now, Doc, we don't want to say that we need white folk in there just yet, because we have a long memory like an elephant. And so when white folk was there, we didn't get anything either. So maybe we need a new.
Well, you know what I mean by that. Well, what are we getting from the black politicians? We can no longer sit by and allow these black politicians. We put these people in office, and we should not be in the condition that we're in. We are going to have to remove these black faces and stop being in love with them and stop being impressed with the fact that I'm Congressman Benny Thompson, I'm Congressman Jeffries, or whatever the hell they are. We've got to get over that. We look at status. We're too status oriented.
Wow.
That's how we look at our politics.
We're going to have to walk that out at a later date, because you're making some points that really need some time to discuss. We're coming to the end of our hour, so I want to shift to the presidential election. You know, this is a serious issue that's taking place here in America. Former President Trump is leading the current President Joe Biden in the polls. Even after he has been indicted and found guilty of several court issues, including one where he defrauded the government and now has got to pay $400 million, $400 million back. The man was able to come out of the courtroom and do a GoFundMe account and raise millions of dollars and gain more support. What is going on in America, Doc?
Well, he's being smart. He's a businessman. He knows how to hoodwink people. He knows how to get a spanking on the behind, and then he tells his people that they did spank me on behind. They tried to kill me, and I want you to give me some support because they are doing me wrong. And when you know that one is lying and they are saying the things that you have in your subconscious mind, you are going to support them because you want to say it yourself. Now, Trump knows that he is trying to maneuver his position so he won't get a felony against him so he can be the next president. And he's doing a good job with that Atlanta district attorney. They have her and her friend in a situation where they might be in a position where they will have their license reviewed, and they might have to be recalled, at least she might be, by the governor, because they're going to take her to court eventually on some of the things that they revealed during this current hearing, and she wasn't even on trial.
Wow.
And his boys did the research, found certain people that would say certain things, and if he can get this thrown out of court, that'll help him stay in a position where he might not get a felony at all until after he gets in office. And I told you last week and before, no matter what he has done, if he doesn't get a felony before he wins again, and it's likely that he's going to win according to the voting information that we've been reading for the last year, he then will be president with felonies against him. And I told you last week and last month and a year ago, if he can get in that position, do those 4 years, he's still not going to go to prison because whoever the president is that replaces him after the 4 years, Republican, Democrat, they're going to give him a pardon because all those boys work together and do the same thing. Joe Biden is clear and clean.
Now,
So he's not going to do anything to Trump. If he has a chance to pardon him, he's going to do it.
Biden would pardon Trump.
Of course, he would do it tomorrow
Wow.
if he had
Doris,
reason to.
Doris, the Democratic president is in trouble. What does he need to do to turn the ship around? And I'm told that he's in between a rock and a hard spot with Israel and Palestine and the border crisis, and he's in a bad position. He's damned if I do and damned if I don't. What do you think he needs?
Well, he put himself in that position. See, I don't look at Joe Biden as being any different than Donald Trump. Look at let's go back to Joe Biden's history and that crime bill. That crime bill that locked up black men for 30 years for a teaspoonful of crack or whatever the hell they were accusing him of. Look at what it did to us as a race of people. 30 and 40 years in jail because of that. Now they're legalizing this stuff. Look at what Joe Biden has done in terms of bringing all these illegal economic immigrants in here. Joe Biden knows exactly what he's doing. What do black people gather from the Democratic Party except symbols? The most loyal supporters of the Democratic Party for the last 65, 70 years. What have we gotten? So I see these two white boys who are basically the same. We haven't gotten anything from them, from Joe Biden. They give us symbols. And we're so all in all over symbols. We need money. We need resources. We need contracts. We need businesses. We need housing. We need good schools, trade schools, all kinds of schools to help our people. And while I'm talking about the schools, in terms of the charter schools in Jackson, you didn't need any charter schools. let's go back to the 1954 decision. It was about having access to resources. We wanted the same resources for the black schools as the white schools were getting. You don't need a charter school in Jackson to do that. You have segregated schools in Jackson today as you had before 1954 and before then. Nothing has changed. Give us the resources. Let's get good black teachers. We had good black teachers when I was coming up in Jackson. We had trades. We don't have that now. So our young people are out there lost and don't know how to do anything. But then you bring all of these poor people from around the world and dump them in communities, in the black communities around this country, closing down centers where children have after-school programs to put illegal economic immigrants in them. What have we gotten from the Democratic Party? Let's go for broke.
Well, we're going to go for broke tomorrow night. Our time has expired. It just flies. But we have so much to talk about. There's so many things and ideas and concepts that we got to put on this table. But Doc, the hour has gone. I'd like to get your closing remarks.
Well, my closing remarks are going to be very simple, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow on the Doc and Sock Show, we're going to talk about drugs and weapons versus people. In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, the same federal government saturated the black community with drugs and weapons. Now they're saturating black people and their communities with illegal immigrants, many crooks and criminals and gangbangers coming in, and they are placing them in the black community as they place the drugs and the weapons in the black community. And this is why I've been telling people that we are going to be extinct, relocated, and if we think we're living in bad environments now in the inner cities and so forth, that is going to be just a temporary thing. In a few years, we're going to be out of the inner cities in the urban ghettos and the rural ghettos. Now, if you want to catch hell, you live out in a rural area where you have to go and get your water out of a well, your roads are bad, you don't have any good police protection, your school system is bad, you're getting less miseducation than you were getting before. You heard me say less miseducation than before. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow and show how all of this is intersected and interrelated. And I'm going to then show you how black people in the world, I'm saying the world, is facing this same pattern. And if we don't do what I've been talking about in those areas of responsibility, which we don't have time to mention, we will be exempt to the point where we'll be totally non-entities in December the 31st, 2029. That is so close until when I think about it, I start getting chills. Wow. Unless we do something about it, starting with the preachers, the elected and appointed officials, and the black corporate leaders, and get new people in, the new man that I've been talking about, which can be done in less than 2 or 3 years in almost any position in America.
Wow, we're gonna come back to it tomorrow night. Doris, your closing comments.
You know, I concur with what Doc has said. He summed it up. You know, in Jackson and elsewhere, we've got to start thinking about a vision for ourselves. Where do we want to be? Where do we want to leave? Where do we want to leave our children? We got to go back to talking about and thinking about the legacy. It doesn't look good for us. And as Dr. said, if we don't start trying to turn this around, we will become extinct. And it reminds me of what Frederick Marcus Garvey said back in the early 1900s. We are going to be the starved looking at the starving at the rate we're going. History repeating itself.
Wow. I want you guys to join us tomorrow night as we continue this conversation. It's a conversation that you won't hear anywhere else on any other channel. These are the conversations that are being held in the households of African Americans. These are the discussions that are taking place in the barber shops and in the beauty shops and in some of our parks. These are the people that we got to get to. And this platform intends to bring you the voices that traditionally have never been heard. Too often we hear the same rhetoric from the same people, but we're going to bring you some new creative ideas and insight from those that have lived and those who have learned how things must be. So we want you to join us tomorrow night at this show starting at 8 o'clock. Until then, stay safe and good night.
Good night.